Big data has been making big headlines and also raising big issues, many of them focused on privacy concerns. The Federal Trade Commission has been looking into the issue, and it suggested to Congress that it require companies to be more transparent about the data they collect and give consumers more control over the data that are collected. Well, it's a topic that's near and dear to CivicScience, a 6-year-old company based right here in our region that mines data for real-time consumer insights. John Dick's with us today. He's CEO and founder of CivicScience, and welcome. Good to have you.
Good to be here, Bill. Thanks.
Yeah, you've got a really cool company. You probably ought to explain to people what is it exactly that CivicScience does.
Well, we're a polling and market research company, which sounds pretty bland.
I've heard about them for years.
Right,
but 50 years or so people have been doing that. So what's new, right?
We have a particularly innovative and we think optimal way of doing it that really reflects the way consumers want to engage with the content they consume online, the elected leaders and the brands they're trying to influence. So we've developed a platform that allows us to poll people and their normal daily travels across their favorite websites and mobile sites. We reduce the polling experience to a question or two or three at a time. It's really appealing to the busy nature of most people out there today. And then we have some really exciting technology developed by some esteemed Carnegie Mellon alums that allow us to find meaning in that data using automation.
So you don't have an army of people calling around on the phone asking people for 10 minutes of their time to go down a list of questions. This is polling in really tiny bursts or bites? Yeah,
it is actually, because one of the things that inspired us to start the company was that we know people aren't inclined to take that time out of their day like they once were, particularly getting phone calls at their home when they're trying to have dinner or read books to their kids, or that don't have time to sit down and spend a half hour completing surveys in their email. Not only is that a problem for the consumers, but the types of people who do engage in that kind of activity have become a shrinking group and a biased group of consumers. So the decision makers out there relying on that kind of information are relying on a less reliable group of people and data as a result.
Okay, so people may have seen your little questions, your little surveys. You go to certain websites, a lot of media websites, and a little poll, what? Yeah.
WPXI, for
All right, well, case in point, right?
Case in point.
WPXI. You go there and you see, answer our little poll or answer the 3 questions or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, the idea there is we have a massive library of questions that we try to pose to people. The idea is to ask people questions we think they'll be interested to answer, trying to match the right content of the question maybe with the right web page that it's on. If somebody's on a sports page, we're more likely to ask them about sports because presumably that consumer is interested in sports. And again, we try to reduce as much of the friction in the process as we can. What happens there is more people participate, a broader and more representative group of consumers participate, and it creates a lot of really interesting real-time data for us to mine.
Well, it sounds great from a privacy standpoint too, because can you really find out very much about any particular individual when you're doing it that way?
And that's another big point of it. I think that privacy and data control is a big part of the culture of our business. We're not asking anybody their name. We don't know where they live. We have no personally identifiable information about people at all. It's just we're looking at a population in aggregate and finding trends and patterns about it. I think there are trends in marketing now, and it's happening in the government as well, that data about us is being collected 24/7. We don't often know what's being collected and when. We don't think at CivicScience that marketing requires people to spy on us, to fleece the data that we give to them, or to treat us like lab rats. And what we like about our model is that we're only collecting anything that people voluntarily choose to share with us. If they happen to see a question that inspires them to answer, then by all means they answer. If they don't, we know nothing about them and they move on. We're also really transparent about what we're doing with that information. So people who answer our polls at the end can come to our website, they can see every answer they've ever given, they can opt out, they can have it deleted, they can move on. And so we think that there's a way to make advances in marketing and market research without placing any heavier burden on the people that source it for us.
But by doing it this way, without ever actually knowing that particular individual, who their name or what their address is, you can still get really relevant, important information that can guide marketers in making their decisions?
Absolutely, because we're finding patterns of behavior, and we find relationships between questions that might not seem to be related. One of my favorites is we find when we analyze our data that people who have an Android smartphone are 41% more likely than people who have an iPhone to have a history of heart disease in their family.
Okay.
Seems completely, right, seem like two really unrelated data points, but time and time again it proves out to be true. It's actually a socioeconomic, what we call a proxy, where we know that generally iPhones tend to be more popular among wealthier people. Wealthier people often have access to better health care and therefore maybe exercise better and eat better and so on. And we're making broad generalizations, but when you do that millions of times, you find that to be true. Well, most people aren't out looking for that kind of information, but if you're a marketer for a heart therapy medication at a pharmaceutical business, that kind of insight's pretty useful, where you're going to spend your mobile
That's right. Do you want to be
dollar.
on the Android apps or do you want to be on the iPhone apps,
Exactly.
right, in terms of the platform?
And we don't need to know that this is John Dick answering this question. We need to know that, oh, maybe that this is a white male who drives a hybrid and lives in this neighborhood or has kids and likes to eat at Qdoba or something, right? And we find patterns in that information that's really useful to marketers to help them design creative ways to reach people.
Well, I love it. You actually have an ebook on your site with lots more really cool observations like the one you just mentioned. Now, we printed it. I know that's not the the green thing to do. But at any rate, 101 cool consumer insights on your website. How do people find it?
It's CivicScience.com.
CivicScience.com. Easy enough. John Dick, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Bill.
Yeah.
All right.
Next up, the motherhood, marshaling mom bloggers on behalf of marketers. Stay with us.